Well, yeah, I mean, I was actually, for the first time, really pursuing being in a band full time, you know. I went to university for a few years until I realized I was done with, you know, being, you know, in the whole, you know, the dead end of education as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
So I quit and I moved to London and I was in a band full time. But before that, I remember, I guess, you know, Guns N' Roses came out with Appetite for Destruction. There was Nirvana, Nevermind. All that stuff was pretty huge at the time that I left my college, I guess you call it in America.
Yeah.
University.
Yeah.
And it was probably about 92, somewhere in 92 or 93. I was just starting to get into heavier stuff. I was really into The End of Silence by the Rollins Band in that moment. And coincidentally, Tool ended up touring with them. Basically, I was very excited about being in a band. It was a lot of it was more in my kind of taste spectrum, you know. So when I moved to London, I'd already been playing with Peach. We were actually a little more relevant than we may have been a few years before. And our mixture was kind of indie. I was into a lot of that shoegazing stuff that was going on.
Yeah.
It was more of like a mixture between indie and heavy. Like I was into the heavier stuff, and a couple of the other guys like the kind of more My Bloody Valentine kind of thing. So it actually accidentally kind of worked at the time a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't have a great success, but yeah, it was exciting to be creating something that you believed in that was very organic from, you know, the four of us, and it actually was in a way relevant, because if it had been 10 years before, it would have had to be one or the other, you know?
Sure, right.
So I basically got a call. I got told that there was a call at my flat. I think I was actually doing a gig with Peach. You got to call the guys from Tool back. And at this point, they'd been really courteous to us as friends. I mean, that's a bit more of a backstory, but we'd done a couple of shows supporting them in London. You know, when they did their London shows, they asked Peach to support them. So, and we'd also gone to LA with the help of some of their people and done 4 shows in LA as Peach, which was incredibly exciting. You could still smoke on a plane back then. So I remember sitting in the back, smoking cigarettes all the way to LA and ordering drinks. Just all of the 4 of us very excited about it. So anyway, I got the call. I called them back, quite nervous. You know, I'm like, what do they want? You know, and it was Maynard, and or it was, I think it was Maynard. But they were like, we'd like you to come out and audition to be in the band, you know. And it was a little too much, really, to absorb and take in. And I think right on that first call, I basically immediately just said, I can't do that, you know. Out of total fear, you know.
Yeah.
Just intimidation. Again, the details are a little sketchy at this point in time, but...
Yeah.
So anyway, I said, thanks very much. It's really nice of you, but I don't think so. You know, I'm way too busy here. We sort of, my brother was friends with the guy that signed Tool, Matt Marshall. They met randomly in America years before, but they both ended up in the music industry, working for record companies. So when Matt signed Tool, we heard about Tool. Almost the first people in England got to get the demo tape. So when they came over and doing really well, we actually took them out to the pub and stuff and hung out with them. And that's how we first met and became friends. It was very non-musical in a way. Sort of showed them around town or whatever. So yeah, I turned it down at first. And then basically I told my brother somehow, and he literally got on the tube and came over to my flat and just started like yelling at me. I was like, you're out of your mind, you know. I mean, part of it was that I was very determined. I was writing music with this band. I'd left university to pursue this, to be in a band. And I was very committed to it as well. So that was part of the reason that I wasn't gonna you know, just suddenly just get up and leave, like sort of almost like for a moral reason, you know.
Yeah.
And just the integrity of what we were doing. But my brother said, look, this is crazy, man. You got to do this. You got to try it. Like, you're not even, he's like, what does it matter? You know, even if you fail, like, what a great thing to be asked to do, and you have to go and try. So I didn't in any way feel musically on a level with them, you know. And, you know, I mean, I wasn't things weren't amazing, but I was pretty happy to be in this zone of like not being stuck in like this endless thing of education and like, whatever I was learning, English and history and Russian studies, like where am I going, and all I was doing was obsessed with music. So I was in a happy place in London. I was like on the dole. I was like, yeah, I'm finally one of the people, And I just, part of it was a bit of a shock. I thought we were really going somewhere. I got to clarify this actually. Peach had finished by that stage and we'd started a new band. I believe our singer Simon had left to go and he was a geography professor.
Oh wow!
And he'd sort of like packed it in, and we'd ended up, me and Ben Derling, my guitar player who I was at school with, we ended up creating a new band called Sterling, and we'd actually been offered a record deal by Beggars Banquet, so it was quite exciting at the time, and it was new. So that was another quite intense thing that we'd actually got somewhere, and we'd been offered a deal. And I'd now been offered this thing, so it was almost too easy just to say, no, I can't, I'm really,
right.
I've got a deal, or whatever. Yeah. But my brother really was like this, because he knew how much it meant to me and how much I liked the band. And so I had the difficult thing of basically calling them back and saying, would it be all right if I changed my mind, and come out, which everybody will tell you is not something that would normally work, People are like, no, you made your choice. Yeah. Or they'd already have moved on, Anyway, they were really cool and they said yes. So that, that's pretty much how I ended up coming out, yeah. They'd written about 3.5 songs for Anima.
So you were part of the writing process on that album?
Yeah. So they sent me, when I said, okay, I'm going to come, and they set up they got me a flight and they said, you're going to come out for a week. Come and audition. So they sent me 3.5 songs on a demo tape, and I remember sitting on the tube in London just like, whoa, I've got the new Tool stuff, and to be honest, it was really quite crazy to listen to. It was like Push It and Eulogy, but very broken down. Almost, I don't think it had any words on it or anything. Even Enema had like the whole end bit, just nuts. But I had to sort of get my head around it and learn it a little bit. And then the other deal was you got to bring some stuff out with you, that you've written. Anything you've got to bring to the table is welcome. And I got kicked out of my band because as soon as I told them I was going for this audition, they were like fireworks, and everyone got really upset. They're like, they actually explained that to me. They said, well, the reason that you came up was because you create and you write music as well. We like your bass playing. You got a great look. No, I'm kidding. But we need someone that actually is involved in the writing process. We need a contributor to the songs. So when I was sitting in Archway, I'd moved again to North London. I was getting ready to go out there, but I was assuming that the future was looking pretty open, because I didn't have a band anymore. There's no way I'm going to get the Tool gig. So I'm sitting there writing music frantically for my new project. And I was excited, actually. I was like really stoked. I'm like, okay, now I'm finally going to get to do exactly what I want to do, and I'm going to put it together. And I had this period for those 2 weeks of just really focusing on the future. And I wrote the riff for 46 and 2 in that period.
Oh, wow. And
I ended up bringing that with me. And that was one of the first things that me and Adam wrote together once I joined. Fortunately, everything is split 4 ways. We're 4 equal members. Nobody calls the shots. Everything's done by vote, support bands, what songs, everything is I guess you'd call it a democracy. But just the way it worked out makes it actually really difficult, and also really gives it a great lifespan, I think. Yeah. But for us to this date now, I mean, it's so exciting that we're about to release our album on Friday, that was probably the hardest period to come through when you're all getting older and you've had success, to a good degree. Everyone's thinking about maybe doing their own things, I mean, Maynard's done a bunch of his own things as well, or, things with other people. And so there could be a point where it's like, well, what is it worth it? Is it, do I want to move on? But I think everyone realizes that you know, this is completely unique. It's as good as it gets. And when you're 25 years in or 20 years in, it's like you're pretty much, you know, quite a bit of the way through your lifespan, you know. And to think that you've been part of something very unique like this is something to be cherished and kept very sacred, you know. So another thing is just to, you know, everyone. It's a tough one because we're all artists, musicians, whatever. Keep your egos in check. You know, once you start getting carried away with your ego, and you start to think that it's all about you. You know, it's like your thing, and then you'll find out very quickly when you go off on your own. Oh, it's not quite as good as when I was with those other guys, is it? Maybe they had a great part to do with it. You know, and like you can. I know this for a fact because I try to write stuff on my own. And even the stuff that we write as a band, if I'd have written it myself, it wouldn't go down the way it goes down with these guys. It needs the opposites to temper each other. I mean, it's a cliche for sure, but I think it simplifies the whole thing a little bit. But it is the truth, you know. That alchemy of like when it works. We're talking about anything, but like we're talking about music and bands. You can't make that up, you know, and like. Yeah. If I'd have joined the band and it hadn't worked, it wouldn't have worked. You know what I mean? So you have to even like appreciate that, you know, that wow, okay, by calling them back and going for it, that would never have happened. You know, the band would have been a completely different thing. I'm not saying it wouldn't have been successful, but like the fact that it was, you got to really cherish that and really take it seriously. Yeah. And if you want to be doing music all your life and be happily successful and you know, and make a living out of it, you can't just treat it, you know, you can't just think you're the shit and just kind of do whatever you want. You have to really see the path you've come down and respect it, you know. The first time I was involved in an album doing Enema, as we were just talking about earlier, it was just full steam ahead, no looking back. Nothing had really been, I mean, not nothing had been achieved, but like for me, it was just right in at the deep end. There's no time to second guess, you know. Yeah. And people are going, that's great, keep moving, and much quicker process, you know. So for sure, this time, I think there were moments where you have this kind of fear that perhaps you kind of like self-imploded a little bit, and the purity of what was good about what you were doing as the four of you has been compromised a little bit by overthinking and, you know, over-calculating everything. And I think... The pressure is more about wanting to do something pure and honest from the four of us, rather than what we think should be produced. You know, of course you want people to like it, but I don't think that was really ever a pressure. I think people would appreciate the work that goes into it, and I think the way that we work and the way that people play their instruments and interact, I think it would have always been. Had value and have been interesting, you know, like there's lots of bands where they got this weird album where it came out towards the end of their career and people are like, that's the weird one, but it still has a part in their history, you know. Sure. And it's appreciated by the people that like them, and maybe by some people that never really were in. It might open up to other people, you know. So I think we have confidence in ourselves, but I think just to try and achieve something that we'd achieved naturally in the past, you know, by not really thinking about it. This time we were kind of going, all right, how did that work again? You know, everyone's kind of gone away from each other a little bit, and it's not quite as natural, you know, when you come back together to just pull that off, and that, you know, it's a little more calculated, and I think the time it took reflects that. You know, we had to kind of break that back down. We had to explode a few times and start from scratch again. And just so you understand, there were never full songs written. Okay. But there was a great body of work that we were working on, some of which followed through into what we have now, but a bunch of it didn't make it, you know. And as a whole body of work, we were kind of working on these piles of ideas at the same time, and you start to have we all see it differently, but you start to have an image of how the whole thing is going to look if you could make it into an image or a landscape, you know. And I know for myself, I would get really excited about it. I'm like, okay, and then we have this idea here that's going to like completely add that to it, and complete the whole picture. But other people are having different ideas, you know. So maybe that was a different way that we worked that didn't work, you know. Like I think before we were a bit more like one song, the next song, the next song. We kind of worked a little more chronologically like that. It was just different, and I think almost like we had to get back to basics a few times and go, you know what, let's just concentrate on one thing, and who likes what, which idea are we all into? Okay, let's start working on that. After having, you know, a month away from each other, there's stuff on this album that was written before I was in the band, you know. There's riffs that Adam had that we included on songs on this album. But even while we're writing, we're all individually coming up with ideas, and, you know, like the old iPhone's great for that now.
Okay, yeah.
You know, I got shitloads on my computer. There's so much to go through, and Adam's a real advocate of that. I'm sort of like, I put my head down, I just keep going forward, and I'm really excited about the next thing, you know. And I have a kind of personal philosophy that if I wake up in the morning and the idea's gone, you know, unless I recorded it, if I wake up the next day and it's gone, it was never good enough to stay, you know. And also a confidence that there's going to be something amazing coming up next. You know, you're making room for a new idea. Adam's got a bit more of a philosophy that, you know, do you remember that thing you wrote? That was great. Do you remember? And I won't remember. He'll play it to me and he'll go, this is great. We've got to use this. And almost like a bank of ideas, you know. So combined, there'd be, you know, we get frustrated with each other because we'd be working on something from an old idea, and I'd suddenly have a new idea, you know, like, what about if it did this? And get really, really excited about it. And the rest of the guys are like, whoa, you know, reel yourself in. Like, you know, just put that on the side. We're working on this right now, you know. Yeah. I kind of get carried away with that, you know.
Yeah.
I guess that would be more of a prog rock thing, you know. I like to be outside. I like to dig in the soil. I like to hike, and I'm into sailing and, you know, getting in, just generally an outdoors type of person. And I do get a lot of ideas when I'm on my own out in nature, you know, walking around. Most of the time, a lot of the ideas that make it onto tour records are kind of rhythmic and percussive, you know. They're beats that kind of come into my head when I'm walking around. And then after that, I'll apply melody to it. So I'll get a kind of crazy beat, and then I'll count it out. Something driving normally that is, you know, you can count it however, but you figure a way to cycle it, and then I'll go up and I'll apply some kind of melody to it. And normally too much melody, you know, and then you like start subtracting stuff. But there's really it's really almost like a pulse, you know, that starts the whole thing. I mean, it's, you know, it always makes me laugh when you listen to the radio and people are doing interviews and they say, yeah, it took me like 2 minutes to write that song. Or like there's this great, wonderful thing about that. For us, it's not like that at all. I mean, I don't think that's ever happened. I don't know if it's happened for, maybe it's happened for Maynard writing lyrics. I don't know. I've had a few little moments of writing, you know, where I was like, okay, that's really cool. And it kind of comes out of nowhere in a way. It wasn't developed.
Yeah.
But as far as like writing a piece, we've always experimented every which way you want. And maybe that's part of the reason the band's what it is, you know, because some of the parts I write end up being guitar parts, or some of the parts Adam writes end up being drum. We'll even go like, what's Adam's guitar part? Let's Danny, play that on the drums just as a rhythm, you know, or even play it on the notes of your electronic pads. And now Adam can play something different and react to that. The band, the musicians, well, not that he's not a musician, Maynard, but the people playing instruments, not the voice instrument.
No offense, singers.
I'm like, by eating my words. That process is exhausting for anyone that wants to write vocals over it, because it keeps changing, you know. It's not even just the melodies or the, you know, the length of the song. It's the whole structure of the song. If you're trying to write a piece that's cohesive and poetic and express, you know, it's full of language and thought, if the band keeps changing the ideas behind it, it's really incredibly frustrating. Unless you're singing a pop song where you're like da 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 da, and you just keep repeating the same words. You know, you can probably fit that over anything. But and we've done it. We've been through that before, where we've sent him something, and then we carry on working on it, and he's already started working on an idea, and it's deeply emotional and sensitive, and he's excited about it, and then we'll go, well, we changed this a little bit, and it's kind of not cool. So we figured that out this time, and also in a way that stretched it out even longer, because suddenly we were like, all right, we got to really be happy with this now before we send it to him. So we spent a couple more years like, all right, perfecting it or whatever, because there's no turning back after that as far as we're concerned now. Just real, like, everyone's creative juices are flowing. You know, everyone has you get really excited about an outcome of an idea, and you kind of get your heart set on it. You know, I mean, I'm sure when people paint, they're like, oh, okay, that's it. But when there are four of us, everyone has a different perception of what that is. So you kind of have to constantly let that go. You go like, especially I'll come home from practice, I'll be like, it sounds so amazing. I can't believe we did that today. We put this bit with this bit, and it's just everything I dreamed of. Within a week, I've got to let that go. I'll be sitting in my studio still listening to that CD like it was my little precious thing, But the song is gone. It's just changed completely, because that wasn't everybody's idea, Even Maynard would send vocals, which I was like, oh my, this is amazing. This is so perfect over the music. On the album, it's completely different now. By the point we got to record, he'd changed what he wanted to hear from himself. So you have to kind of let that go constantly.
Maybe a B-side album down the way.
Well, oh yeah. I mean, there's like
reworked versions.
I've got booklets and booklets of CDs of every day we recorded practice. So that, but maybe interesting to a super fan, but really tedious to listen to. But I mean, you'll get an idea of how exhaustive the process was of going through and over and trying different little increments of stuff.
Sure.
I mean, when it comes to the lyrical content, it's all him. I mean, he'll react to the music. We'll talk about it sometimes. Like we have a few get-togethers like a year before we record and stuff, and go through where we're at. But mostly he'll call for rhythm ideas, or like have me like count out he won't quite understand how the rhythm of something goes, so I'll help count it out for him. But when it comes to the actual, the poetry of it, it's all him. It's real inspiring though, because you'll start to see patterns and the way that it relates in numbers to the words and stuff, and we'll explore that, and that kind of branches off into the artwork. You can actually that fuels the artwork a little bit, because now you have a discussion about, whoa, that's crazy, you're singing about this, that you reacted to our music and sang this, and now I'm telling you that this is what the music is saying, like mathematically,
Wow, yeah.
And then you'll talk to Alex Gray, and he's like, well, I've been working on this painting that, we're working on one actually, so it's all in the works.
And are these directed by Adam Jones, your guitar player?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of people working on them. We've had some footage that we haven't used for a while, that we're trying to incorporate. We've got a couple of other guys that do CGI. It's a bigger collaboration, I think, than it's been. You'd have to ask Adam for specifics, but it's a bigger collaboration that's been before, and it's going to be a bit more of a mix of media. So it should be, there'll be video.
That's great.
Really cool.
That's why you guys are a tool, blending the mediums.
I guess I'm a workhorse, I'm really proud to be able to write music and have a place where I can write crazy stuff. I mean, I didn't even really think about it. I just always thought these ideas would be cool if they were played by a drummer and a guitar player could play them with me. And it never really was the case. I was in a group of people where I could pull that off, and this is a place where for the last 25 years I've been able to come up with some crazy stuff, and Danny just looks at me and goes, yeah, and like just starts playing with me immediately, and Adam loves it, or he'll come up with something completely against it, and creatively that was my dream really, you know, you get a great idea and you want to just go like, this is a great idea and play it to the world. But a lot of times people get pressured into just kind of molding it and conforming it a little bit to whatever everything else sounds like.
Yeah.
And I have the lucky chance and you know, the happy place of being able to just to do that freely, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they like everything, but you know, I've managed to get, there's some stuff on this album which I'm so excited about people hearing that's just really nuts, you know.
That's
but
great.
they help me make sense of it and make it, you know, there's all kinds of stuff that goes into it, but I definitely when I record, I give myself a lot of options. I have a dirty amp, I have a clean amp, I have a direct signal. I have another direct. This time I had two direct signals, one that had all the effects. So it hit the DI and went through all the effects. And the other one missed all the effects. So you've always got a clean DI as well. And then when you're mixing a certain part in a song, when you play with those balances between those four different, it sounds over the top, but sometimes, as you say, to hear the clarity all the way through the scale of a bass, sometimes you need to push a little more of and depending on what the guitar's playing or the drums are playing, you need to push a little more of one or the other. So like the crunchy, distorted side is a little more high end. Maybe you need to push that a little bit. It'll cut through on a certain drum fill. That gives you options if you do that. And it's not that difficult. You can have a direct signal that's clean and you can have a signal going into your amp. And, you know, I actually have two amps, which is, you know, pushing the budget a little more. You got to like get, you know, have a splitter and put a dirty signal into the other one. But for recording purposes, that really is something that we play with that helps find the balance in each part of the composition. I mean, it's pretty epic. The last couple of weeks have been incredible. Seeing it come out and be available. Also blows my mind that it's been kept that like the piracy of it used to be a real worry, you know. And somehow our stuff really never. I mean, you could get it on YouTube, you could go on there and listen to the album and stuff, but we really put a lot of effort into this release. We remastered every single album for the digital format. So we sent, you know, Bob Ludwig up in Portland, Maine, he masters all our records. He also remastered all the old records for the digital format. After having had, you know, I guess, I don't know how many years, but 5 or 6 years of high-end experience of mastering stuff that goes out on a digital service and hearing it back on the radio and getting feedback. So he really, you know, I think it's really the cutting edge of how good it could sound now. And it sounds a little different, you know, than the original CD version. There's some pros and cons, you know, but there really was no choice at this point than to do that. I mean, we're not selling any CDs. It's also an opportune moment to do it with our record coming out. So we had a lot of, we also, you know, worked really hard with the record label to make sure that we were compensated properly. And, you know, it's been a really crazy couple of weeks. I mean, as far I've had family out, so I've been distracted, but I've been like going on my phone looking at the charts. I mean, but I mean, it's exciting. You know, we just played a tour. We went to Europe and we played a bunch of festivals. We headlined them and did our own shows as well. And doing our own shows in Europe, like after 10 or 11 years or something, they're doubled or tripled in size without us actually having released anything. And this was before we released all our catalogue. So it's just a very fortunate moment, really, for everything to collide in this way. And I think, you know, you can feel the impetus with like the relief of finishing our new album, and like it's just all it's sort of like a perfect storm, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
You know, like the first track we wrote was, I guess it was Descending, and once we were done writing that, you know, I never wanted to hear it again. And then you know, all of a sudden years later we finished the whole thing. It's actually one of my favorite tracks now.
Okay.
You know, I really, really love it. I don't know. It keeps changing, honestly. I love the last track, Tempest, is really epic. It's 15 minutes long. It really combines me and Adam's vibe as far as like the riffs and stuff, and then it just goes off with Danny. The vocals are beautiful on it. It's really self-indulgent, but like epic, you know. Like, I mean, the guitar solo is like 7 minutes long.
Oh, I can't wait.
And it just it's full of crazy time signature changes, but it's really slamming rock song. So, and that's the last track on the album, on the CD format. Well, I mean, it sounds like cliche, but Jimi Hendrix is a huge influence on me. I love the freedom in everything he did. I like, you know, just the uncompromising awkwardness of his playing style. Just, you know, there's no worry about sounding perfect, or it's all about pushing boundaries and just feeling the moment. I find that really inspiring, especially playing live. Bass players, you know, most of them have passed away. I mean, Jimmy's gone as well, but, you know, like Cliff Burton was great. When I was a kid, I was like fascinated by that. Phil Lynott, amazing, you know, Thin Lizzy. I love, do you know Andrew Wise? He's played for Rollins Band for a while.
Oh, okay.
He's also plays for Ween and stuff. I remember seeing him with the Rollins Band. Just insane bass player, really inspiring. There was a band called the God Machine when I was a kid. I'm not a kid. I was like in London, but I was like 21. Feels like being a kid. Jimmy Fernandez, he was amazing. He's gone as well. But Eric Avery, Jane's Addiction, bass player. I mean, you can't mess with those bass lines, you know?
Yeah.
And then I just, you know, I could go into music. I mean, there's so much music that I like. I really like a wide gamut of stuff that I'm into. I like electronic music. I like, you know, indie music. I like all kinds of stuff. Probably less of the heavy stuff, you know. I like really heavy stuff. I'm into Behemoth at the moment.
Okay.
I've met those guys recently, but you know, it sort of makes a difference when you meet people. You get a warm welcome into their world,
sure,
you know, and you start to have a different appreciation for the music. I like Wolves in the Throne Room. I like some of that really heavy stuff. I guess they call it dark black metal, but I'm not concerned with categories really. I think it's kind of stupid.
Sure.
Just tons of different stuff. I mean, but Wolves in the Throne Room, they were really, to me, they sound like Mogwai, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just expansive, sonic stuff. And I think we get to do that in Tool as well a little bit. Real atmosphere.
Yeah.
And then tighten up into heavy stuff. I mean, I think that's the difference that we've been afforded that privilege in Tool, is to do a bit of everything, you know? Like some really beautiful vocals on the new album. It's a whole different mixture of stuff that you've heard before. I'm really a big fan of music. I mean, when we're on tour, I do a little DJing when we have a day off the next day.
Really?
I'll do a thing called Shower Club for the crew and the band. And so like we have a day off the next day after everyone finishes their job. It's like 1 a.m. We'll get some food in, extra booze, and I'll DJ for a couple of hours that night. Which I find really fun.
Where would this be?
At the venue.
Okay.
Yeah, so we set up at the venue, you know, and we don't have to roll out immediately because we don't have to go to another city the next day. So we'll just get like a barbecue or something going. And I love doing that. I love getting in my head and just following the vibe of, you know, which is a DJ's dream, really.
Yeah,
you know, you just kind of react to the audience. I was horrified when Maynard told me, he's like, I'm going to tell everyone they can't use their cell phones and, you know, they'll get kicked out if they do. But it was unbelievable. And we had an announcement going on before. Nobody did it. I mean, you can still see the stuff on YouTube because people have little things in their hats or whatever. But to play a show with none of that in front of your face was just epic, you know. And I think everyone else enjoyed it as well, you know. And then at the last song, he'd say everyone could take out the cell phones.
Okay.
So we do Stinkfist at the end, and people could film it, and it would all come up like this. It was kind of like a theatrical moment, though. You know, all the iPads come up and stuff. Yeah. I mean, it's not really. I mean, it's gonna get recorded and go on YouTube, whatever. But it's a respect to us too to like actually concentrate on the experience. You know, you can't do that when you're looking at your phone. You know what I mean? After a week or so of doing it, I'm just like, man, that's genius. You know, like a really ballsy move. Because you don't want people to be upset. I think he did it with Pussifer or Perfect Circle. Mm-hmm. before, and he said, I'm going to do this, and you'll see there's going to be a lot of hate, and we're going to get some backlash, but I really want to do it. And it's just distracting as well to have people, like that. You want to see people's faces too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.